Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice for radio, so today I'm going to show you all the bosses from Yoshi's Woolly World, the new game for Nintendo's Wii U. And what I really like about Yoshi's Woolly World is that it's old school boss battles. It's learn the patterns, and it's hit them 3 times and they lose. None of this health bar rubbish. You hit them 3 times and you win. Nice and simple. Let's see who's up first. So first up we have Montgomery the Mole in the first of a few appearances by him as a boss, and it's the first boss in the game, so it's very simple. He pops up, you jump on his head, he exposes an X, and as you will see from all the bosses in this game, X means you need to drop a hammer on that X. You do it 3 times and you win. There's not really very much to it. It'll throw some spiked balls, some that roll and you jump over, some that you bounce and you run under. It really is as simple as that. Up next we have Bert the Bashful, and apparently the best way to get rid of somebody bashful is to try and take off their clothes, which is a little bit weird, I'm going to be honest with you. All you have to do with Bert is throw a yarn ball at him, and at times there will be fake Bert, so make sure you hit the real one, at which point there's no jumping down with a hammer drop on the X. You just use your tongue to take off his trousers, which is in absolutely no way weird or inappropriate. As always, you do this 3 times and you win. Next up we have Knotwing, a Koopa Trooper, shockingly enough with wings, made of knots in fact, hence the name. Well, technically made of string, but the string have knots in, so it totally counts. And he is your first boss on even-numbered worlds, 2, 4 and 6, whereas the previously mentioned Montgomery Mole is your first boss on odd-numbered worlds, 1, 3 and 5. Knotwing's nice and simple. He's going to try and crush you with his shell, get out the way when he does it, use your tongue to undo the wings on his back, and then he'll flip over showing you an X. And as always, when you see an X, you drop the hammer. He'll flick around a little bit in his shell, but just avoid him and drop the hammer 3 times for the win. Next up, we have Bun the Fire Dog, or as I like to call him, Pyro. I'm sure there's some kind of pun on hot dog going on around here somewhere, but I'm going to let you do that one yourself. He is a fire dog, he jumps around, he shoots fire, make sure to jump over said fire, and remember your floaty jump by holding A is your friend. When he stops glowing for a moment, you can throw a yarn ball at him, he'll get covered in yarn, puff up with smoke, fall over, his tongue rolls out, and would you believe it, there's an X on his tongue. So you drop the hammer on his tongue, and you do that 3 times, and you get yourself a win. Now, as we're going into the first boss of an odd-numbered world, we have Montgomery the Mole back. This time it's a similar kind of thing, except now he's going to be balancing himself on little moles, and you have to use yarn balls to knock over the little moles. Then Big Montgomery will fall over, and he shows an X on his bum, so you drop the hammer 3 times, and you get the victory. Watch out again for them spiky, spiky balls. Next up, we have the elaborately named Miss Cluck the Insincere. And slightly trickier at times here, but only in terms of actually trying to get your tongue around the little piece of string round her waist. It's nice and simple. You avoid her as she throws eggs at you, which turn into spiky balls and shoots across the screen. And you need to try and aim up with your tongue. You undo the little piece of string round her waist. A little chick comes out with a cross on his head. You drop the hammer on that cross 3 times, ladies and gentlemen, and you've got yourself a victory. And as we're going into World 4, and World 4 is an even-numbered world, we are seeing Notwing back as our first boss. Very similar to the first one, except now you're on a little raft over some water. He's again going to drop down, but this time he'll only show the cross on his stomach to be hammer dropped if he actually goes and hits the spikes at the bottom of the sea. So sometimes, as you'll see in the video, he'll just drop down onto the planks and he won't actually flip over and show the cross. So sometimes, especially you'll see at the last time here, you got to go to a little bit of effort to try and make him slam down onto the spikes. But as always, he flips over, he shows his cross, and if you hammer drop that bad boy 3 times, he's going to go. Watch out for the big bits of water which come up and try and suck you down into them spikes. Next up, we have Naval Piranha. Interesting because it's pretty much the only boss in the game that is not beaten by throwing string or undoing stuff with your tongue. It is actually beaten by throwing bombs. There will be little shy guys throwing bombs into the arena. You have to get one of them and keep it, and then the piranha will show its mouth, first from the side, then from below, then from above. You throw the bomb into the mouth and he flicks over, and would you believe it, there is a white cross on his midsection. Hammer drop 3 times and you've got the win. Watch out for the multitude of piranha vines, etc. going around, because they're going to try and get you. And watch out, because the second time the vines wrap around, they go over, so you can't just jump over them, you've got to run under them. And don't be sad, ladies and gentlemen, but we are about to see the final appearance of Montgomery the Mole as a boss. Very similar to the previous times, you need to try and jump and then get him to show his little white cross. Unfortunately, this time you need to smash him, you need to hammer drop when he's holding ice above his head. But as you'll see from the video, sometimes the timing on this has to be absolutely precise. This is the hardest boss in the game. It's the only boss that actually killed me, and weirdly, after this, the bosses do get a little bit easier. So enjoy this one, because as far as I'm concerned, we say goodbye to Montgomery the Mole with the hardest boss in the entire game. And just when you thought Miss Cluck the Insincere might have had the best name of any boss in the game, we get the even better named Sniff the Unfeeling. He is a bit of a shy guy who shoots out icy stuff, and again, as we're in World 5, which is the ice world, you gotta have an ice world in a platform game. This boss fight takes place on ice. It's quite a novel one in that you've got to wait until he's standing still, then you've got to aim yarn right at his feet, which can be a bit of a tricky shot. You've then got to hit his feet twice more, he'll flip onto his front, and would you believe it, there's a white cross on his back. Drop the hammer 3 times, ladies and gentlemen, you know the drill by now. And now, ladies and gentlemen, as sad as it is time to pay our final visit to Notwing, in a boss which isn't the hardest boss ever, but it's what I would call very, very fiddly. At times there are an awful lot of bullet bills on the screen to deal with, and here, again, he's going to do his patented drop and try and crush you. This time we're on clouds rather than on planks over a river, and when he does that, he will then reappear and come across the bottom of the screen, at which point you've got to make a fairly skillful shot with your yarn and actually cover up his cannon with yarn, at which point his cannon will blow up and he will expose that lovely white cross on which we need to drop the hammer. The third time especially, the time in which you've actually got to hit that cannon is very, very short, so this can be a fairly fiddly boss battle. Say goodbye, ladies and gentlemen, to Notwing. Now, I must give you a little bit of a spoiler alert here, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to be honest with you. Okay, spoiler alert over. Bowser Jr. is the final boss here, which nobody really saw coming until the end of the game. He wasn't even really hinted at. So, it's kind of interesting to see that he came up. Unfortunately, after the last Montgomery and Notwing battles were quite interesting, this one really isn't all that interesting. This is the first part of the Bowser battle, and there's a whole bunch of fire to avoid, and then you throw a ball of yarn at him and jump on his head. It's a bit of a disappointment, to be honest, given the other bosses. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have the last boss battle in the game, the second part of the Bowser Jr. battle. There is a lovely little spool that you can use to jump your way halfway across the level, and you run around and you pull little bits of string off the giant balls of yarn, and you use your yarn throwing to basically knock all of the floating balls of yarn away from Bowser Jr. When you've knocked all the pieces of yarn away, you've completed the game. Congratulations. Okay, so hopefully you all enjoyed that. Hopefully you had a favourite boss and you enjoyed watching Yoshi take them all down, dropping the hammer, if you will, both figuratively and, of course, literally when he fell into a hammer and fell on the conveniently marked X. As always, make sure you like this video and subscribe, and if you've got a favourite boss from the ones I've just shown you, stick it down in the comments, and I'll be back very shortly with more video game content, including weird things I've noticed from this same Yoshi's Woolly World game. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wossy Plays.